Hello, everyone. Welcome to another episode of Stay Connected to the Worcester Senior Center. I'm your host, Dr. Michael Hirsch, the Medical Director for the Division of Public Health for the City of Worcester. And this is our August 2025 edition. And I'm glad to be back to talk to you. You can see I'm dressed very cool today because we've had another one of those heat waves. And August, many of you know, is a month that people sometimes refer to as the dog days because it's very hot. And that's a good thing if you're, going to a pool or to a pond or lake or to the ocean. But if you're stuck working in an office and the air conditioning's not so great, that's something that you have to contend with. And that's why the city, in big-time heat emergencies, offers cooling stations. And we usually use the public library as our main one, but we'll sometimes have a supplemental one in the City Hall itself. So August is the 8th month of the year, right? And it's named after Augustus Caesar. It's a consistently warm month, big time summer month. The flower for August is the gladiolus. I don't know how many of you are fans of different kind of flowers. Gladiolus is a very ornate flower. And it comes in lots of different colors, and it's very frequently seen at weddings and unfortunately also at funerals. So it's not my favorite flower for that reason. I've seen a lot of funerals and gladiolas are always there. So as far as the gemstone of the month, it's the onyx. Actually, a special type of onyx called a sardonyx. Onyx usually is a black stone, very beautiful stone, but it can come in colors. And the sardonyx usually is more of a red-yellow mixture, and it has the reputation of being a very health-promoting stone. So in the ancient days of midwifery, in the medieval times, when a midwife would come to help deliver a baby, they would take one of those stones and put it between the breasts of the mother who's delivering for good luck. And not just for good luck in the delivery, but also that their milk would come in and breastfeeding would go well. So yes, sardonyx, a very interesting stone if you ever get a chance to look at one. Interestingly, in the Napoleonic conquest of Egypt, there were a lot of French soldiers that wore that stone as, I guess, a goodbye present from their sweethearts or their wives. And so many wore it and were unfortunately fatally wounded that people stopped liking onyx for a while because they thought it was bad luck. So anyway, enough about those kind of things. So to cover some of the things that happened in the month, interestingly, with all the things going on in the CDC about vaccination, and I've spent at least 2 of the last shows talking about our Health and Human Services Secretary, Robert F. Kennedy Jr., who is trying to change vaccine rulings and policies by putting in anti-vax folk in positions of power. So he's already eliminated the requirement for children and pregnant women to get COVID vaccination. He doesn't want people to get the flu vaccine unless it's without the drug thimerosal in it. Thimerosal is a mercury-containing drug. Everyone hears mercury and they think about, fish that are poisoned and it's bad for your liver. That's true if you eat mercury-poisoned fish. But the kind of mercury that's in the drug thimerosal is actually what's called ethylated. So it gets very quickly metabolized by the body and comes out in your urine. It doesn't linger there. What's the big deal with thimerosal? Again, we talked about it last month. It's been implicated in a now totally debunked medical paper from England in autism. And there's no evidence that autism and thimerosal are linked. But the very fact that 25 years after this whole theory was debunked, that RFK Jr. has people on their new CDC vaccination panel that are recommending that you not get flu vaccine containing thimerosal, then that it just goes against everything that we know scientifically is true. And unfortunately, it also proves fairly obviously that when RFK Jr. was questioned, particularly by Senator Cassidy of Louisiana, who is a board-certified obstetrician, that he would not change the vaccine laws or recommendations, he wasn't telling the truth. He is changing them, and he's certainly making people worry about them. I've gotten a lot of calls about, well, I want to get the flu vaccine, should I not? So one more thing about thimerosal. Thimerosal originally was put into flu vaccine vials when these vials were used for what's called multi-dose administration. So let's say you're running a flu clinic and you expect to see 1,000 patients. You get these vials where each vial could contain 25 to 50 vaccinations. Thimerosal is an antibacterial agent that every time you go into that vial, there's a little risk that you might contaminate the vial. Thimerosal got rid of that risk. That's why it was put in these multi-vial doses, multi-dose vials, I should say. That being said, almost nobody uses those kind of multi-dose vials anymore. Almost all the flu that you get at CVS or Walgreens or in your doctor's office are single administration syringes, and they don't have thimerosal in them. So if you really are worried about it, you can ask wherever you want to get your flu vaccine, are you giving me a single dose vaccination syringe, or are you using a multi-dose vial? So multi-dose vial, thimerosal might be in there. Should you worry about thimerosal anyway? No. But if you are anyway worried, then go for the single dose vial whenever you can get it. So National Immunization Recognition Month is August. And that's because we want parents who are sending their young children to school to make sure they're up to date in the vaccines that the children have to have, so that there's no big outbreaks in the school system. And we are worried. I mean, the outbreak that has happened with measles in Texas and now at least 18 other states, we have had 1,300 cases of measles. That's more than double what we had 5 years ago. And 25 years ago, measles was declared conquered. So we are seeing enough people have doubts about vaccination that they are willing to let their kids get measles. And what does that lead to? Well, there have been 3 deaths amongst those 1,277 cases. There also have been about 150 hospitalizations, and these hospitalizations can lead to serious illness, because the measles doesn't just cause the rash on your body and in your mouth, but can also affect the lining around your brain. Not worth going through. Not worth going through, honestly. Just the other day, we celebrated the anniversary of Dr. Benjamin Waterhouse, one of the 3 founding physicians of the Harvard Medical School, who brought the technique of vaccination for smallpox to this country 4 years after Dr. Edward Jenner did the first vaccination for smallpox in England. So there's a long and storied and valuable history about how effective vaccinations could be. And then over the course of the 1800s, you had these giants like Louis Pasteur that came up with vaccinations for rabies and vaccinations for diphtheria, vaccinations for tetanus. These are all deadly diseases that one by one we could check off and say, it's not going to be a problem anymore. And all of a sudden now, in 2025, it's a problem again. It's something that in this Vaccination Recognition Month, we should recognize that we should not go backwards in time and deal with communicable diseases that have been conquered and now are being allowed to sprout up again. Polio and measles and diphtheria and pertussis. All of these diseases were not being seen for decades, but they're back. And the more people have doubts about vaccination, the more we will see outbreaks like this. So far, knock on wood, we have not seen it in Massachusetts. We've not seen it in Worcester. But I think there's a lot of stressors. Now, you know that the COVID vaccination, the mRNA vaccine that was developed by a company in Cambridge called Moderna, saved millions of lives, absolutely millions of lives. We started administering it the minute it was available on January 11th, 2021. Operation Warp Speed, which President Trump in his first administration authorized to bump up the production of this vaccine. That vaccine saved lots of lives. So Moderna, which is a very progressive company that also really follows carefully what are our biggest viral threats out there, developed a vaccine for bird flu. And they had a contract to mass produce bird flu vaccine, which I think we should have a large supply of in storage. You know, fortunately, we haven't seen a lot of cases since the original cases were described in 2024. There still have only been less than 80 cases and only 3 deaths from bird flu. And we don't think yet that bird flu has figured out how to be transmitted from human to human. It's always been in livestock workers, poultry workers, right? And the deaths have come in workers like that that have had very bad medical comorbidities. And we were very excited when Moderna said, oh yes, we have a vaccine against it. That contract to mass produce it was canceled by RFK Jr. So we are not as prepared as we should be should bird flu continue to evolve like a lot of these viruses do and turn into a version that could travel from human to human. It's already jumped into different species. It's jumped into seals. It's jumped into ferrets and raccoons and other woodland animals. We know it's jumped from the bird to the cow. So it's out there. It's probably trying to think of ways to get to us, and we're not as fully armed against it as we should be, which is wrong. Okay, so that's just National immunization month. There are other things that August celebrates. So we have on August 4th something that I really want to mention, because some of you who are listening to this have been following the terrible tragedy down in Texas where the Guadalupe River rose so quickly, something in the range of 25 feet in half an hour, and overwhelmed a whole area of population around the river, including some summer camps where, little camper girls were swept away. Tragic thing. And there's a lot of controversy there because, once again, the Trump administration diminished the ability of the National Weather Service to predict some of these things. A lot of the towns in that area knew that structures were being built in the floodplain, but they didn't have special warning systems like sirens. The camps, some of them did not have Wi-Fi service, so that they couldn't get alerts on their cell phones. So these are all issues that probably in the what they call an after action report that will come out from that flood will help us. It's not assign blame. It's trying to improve the system. That's really what any of these tragedies should do. If anything, we want to learn so that it doesn't happen again. That's the basic of almost anything. If it's a mishap in the operating room, if it's a mishap in a natural disaster, if it's a mishap in how we distribute medication or vaccine, all of those things have to be studied so we don't let it happen again. The 4th of August is a recognition day for the Coast Guard, which is a very undervalued service amongst our armed forces, right? The Coast Guard does a lot of work in interceding with drug smuggling, with human trafficking, with rescue of boaters out on the high seas. Well, this particular flood, they dispatched a specialist in sea rescue, and this one person saved 160 people by, descending from a helicopter and pulling these people out that were about to be swept away. Unbelievable. So hats off to the Coast Guard. They are a wonderful service, and they need to be applauded. They were founded just shortly after the end of the Revolutionary War, and they've been on the front lines, on the borders for us, on the high seas since then, and they really deserve a lot of credit. That's on August 4th. August 6th and August 9th, I think I've referred to them in previous shows. Those are the days that we chose in 1945. So this year, it'll be 80 years when we dropped the first 2 atomic bombs. The first one, August 6th, on Hiroshima. The second one on August 9th on Nagasaki. And this was a very tortured decision by Harry Truman, but he recognized how many thousands and thousands of Allied casualties were going to be incurred by trying to invade Japan, when Japan at the time had a very suicidal attitude towards trying to protect their home islands. They were going to fight to the last person. They were instructed to kill at least 10 of our troops for every one of them that died. It was going to be a bloodbath. So these 2 bombs were dropped, and sure enough, by August 14th, the Japanese government surrendered, and VJ Day happened. Very difficult decision, obviously, and has huge consequences, and it ushered in the atomic age and the Cold War and the competition between the nuclear powers. We're still seeing that today. You see how hard President Trump has been trying to eliminate the ability of Iran to build a nuclear weapon. So it's still a threat out there, and it's still something that looms over us. But as I think I mentioned last month, if you ask a World War II veteran, the ones in the Pacific that were gearing up to invade Japan, the ones from Europe that hoped that were going home after the European theater had ended the conflict on May 7th, they were getting shipped to Japan or to the Pacific to help with the invasion. You ask any of those folks, they will tell you, I think I'm very grateful we didn't have to do that invasion. Instead, we landed as friends at the very end of August, and September 2nd, there was a big surrender signing ceremony in the middle of Tokyo Bay on the USS Missouri. And look at Japan today. It was totally rebuilt with dollars from the US, and they're a very staunch ally of ours, which is great, a wonderful outcome at a great cost. And so when you see this year, because it's the 80th anniversary, you'll see on TV ceremonies in Hiroshima and Nagasaki. There's a big peace bell that's there that survived the blast, and it's almost like a sacred site now in Hiroshima for people to go to and pay homage to those that didn't survive. So those are 2 days that you should take note of. August 14th is a day that is kind of interesting if you're an ice cream fan like me. It's National Creamsicle Day. Not a healthy food. I'm deviating from my public health announcement here. Just to say, I really love the taste of a creamsicle on a hot day. So for those of you who aren't familiar, that's a kind of, usually it's a orange flavored ice. Sometimes it can be raspberry flavored, but in the middle it's like vanilla ice cream. Wow, that is a treat on a hot day. And I really enjoy that. So what else is going on in public health? Well, I think we have to concentrate again on this spate of insect-borne illnesses that we're experiencing, because this is a peak mosquito and tick season right now. And the ticks, we usually were concerned about Lyme's disease. Lyme's disease was, it feels like a virus when you get it. You get bitten by a tick, you get this little target sign on your skin. You have to carefully remove the tick. Hopefully you find the tick, remove it. But if the tick has been engorged, if that little body has gotten all fat, that means that they've gotten to your bloodstream, and you should let your physician know, your primary care physician, or go to an urgent care, and they'll give you a couple of doses of a medication called doxycycline, and usually that's all you need to do. But if for some reason you've missed the bite, because maybe it was on your back and the little fat tick fell off, those situations might lead to Lyme's disease. And Lyme's disease can be a real awful chronic illness. Low-grade fevers and joint pains and different kinds of neurologic symptoms, GI symptoms. But the worst thing now with these ticks is that there's about 3 or 4 other diseases that have been identified that ticks are carrying. The main one that I would highlight today is called babesiosis. Babesiosis is a disease that starts out, again, like a virus. Maybe you get a headache, maybe you get a little low-grade fever, and then it's almost like malaria. You have chronic fevers on and off. You have lots of aches and pains. You might have upset stomach. You might have some almost asthmatic kind of symptoms. And if recognized early, you can get treated with an antifungal agent that will make the symptoms less. But it can also become a chronic condition. So then the new tick that came up from Texas, which is called the Lone Star tick, in certain susceptible people, and it seems to be a genetic thing, that tick bite will make you allergic to red meat. So the symptoms there are, you get that bite and you do whatever you do to try to ameliorate it. Maybe you take your dose of the antibiotic that I mentioned, doxycycline, but somehow this thing got into your bloodstream and takes root. And the next time you have a hamburger, the next time you have a steak, you start to vomit because you can't tolerate it. And it can be quite debilitating until you recognize that that's what's causing it. So, so all of these things say protect yourselves from ticks and be aware that if you go out at this time of the year in a field, in the woods, make sure that you do a tick check when you get home for yourself, for your little ones if you're going out with your grandchildren or children, and also for your pets, because they will transmit these ticks, the pets will, to you or your family. And if you can catch it early, if the tick just kind of jumped on you but hasn't quite latched on, you can sweep them away and not have to worry about any of these things that I mentioned. So wearing clothing appropriately, if at all possible. It's very hard if it's very, very hot to wear long sleeves, long pants, tuck the pants into your socks, and be aware then also that the exposed areas of your skin, your face, your neck, treat that with DEET, the insect repellent that prevents ticks and mosquitoes from latching on. Ticks don't care about what time of the day it is, and some of these newer ticks, like the Lone Star tick, they don't just stay in the grass. They climb up trees, they climb up bushes, so they can jump on you as you're going through brush if you're taking a hike through a trail in the woods. As far as mosquitoes go, we're still monitoring very carefully. We've had 4 monitoring periods so far from the Central Mass Regional Mosquito Control Group. Knock on wood, we haven't had any positive hits for West Nile or Eastern Equine Encephalitis, triple E, here in Worcester. There was one area in Shrewsbury that was sprayed because they did find a West Nile mosquito there, but there haven't been any patients yet in our region, which is great. And we're very grateful again to our city manager, Batista, for continuing to, being willing to put in the budget the money that it takes to keep affiliated with the mosquito control group, because they're very, very reliable. So those 2 types of insects are definitely a target for us to try to get education out there and to urge the community to do the right thing so they can protect themselves. The third thing that I would talk about in this time of year is just the heat itself. I talked to you, mentioned already in this session about cooling stations, but you have to really also be a little bit more sensible and proactive about the activities that you plan. If it's going to be a major heat advisory day, and the local news will carry the weathermen that will give you the warnings, this is going to be a 3-day heat period with temperatures in the 90s, feels like 100, very muggy, all that stuff. That's not the day to necessarily go in the garden in the height of the afternoon and do your stuff that day. And I'm not encouraging you to instead go out in the dawn or the dusk period, because that's where the mosquitoes are. I think a lot of lawns turn brown this time of year, and that's just part of nature right now. We're going to see hotter temperatures. We're going to see more and more of these horrific heat effects. I think the Guadalupe River down in Texas was probably related to climate change. I think, we haven't yet seen a lot of hurricane activity, but when we have in the last few years seen hurricane activities, they've been much more virulent, much more aggressive than we've ever seen before. And these hurricanes, because all of the waters are warmer, they can travel further north. And that's a reason that we might get a lot of rainfall from these hurricanes. So all of this climate change stuff is not made up. And I think it's only going to get worse. So you have to use your judgment. If you're planning an outdoor activity, or if your job takes you outside a lot, you have to find time to cool off, drink a lot of water. Staying hydrated is really important. And just make sure that you have sunglasses, potentially a protective hat on. I never go anywhere with my bald head without a baseball cap. That's just my thing. And for good reason, because I think it's very, very difficult to feel comfortable in the hot weather, the sun blaring in your eyes, and you get very dry. Gotta keep the hydration going and try to protect your eyes and your skin as much as you can. So sunscreen if you're going to be outside for long periods of time. Minimum SPF 30, but most dermatologists now are recommending SPF 50, especially on the little ones. Because unfortunately, all of this sun damage is cumulative. So you start out with the little ones out there getting sunburned at age 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, or if they're a working farmer family, if they're out there in the fields helping out mom and dad, and then they're doing their own thing out in the fields. Over the years, that's what converts some of our little, skin marks into worse things like squamous cell carcinoma, which is eminently treatable, or worse, melanoma, which can be unfortunately quite deadly. So very important also for you to keep track of these little freckles that you have. It's advisable for you to, if you have a lot of them, to go to a dermatologist and have them do what's called a mapping procedure. It's not a procedure really. They just look very carefully at your whole body, and they take pictures now. That's the new thing. It's like a scan. Or they just write drawings of where you have dark spots so that they can monitor from year to year whether they're spots that are changing, and especially in areas that you can't see, like on your back, on the back of your neck, things like that. And so that's what happens if you're not protecting your little ones all through life. Those things at some point can turn into a malignancy that is a tragedy. So the hydration piece, I think water is perfectly fine, but you know how everyone tries these Powerades and Gatorades and electrolyte solutions, smart water. I'm not as convinced that that makes a difference, but they sure are tasty. And if that's the thing that will get your little one or your friend who's kind of obstinate about, I don't want any water, drinking, get them to drink Gatorade, fine. The last thing I wanted to mention, because we did get some comments last month after the July show came out about my statement that I was worried about the atmosphere of fear that was being generated around the country, whether it was because of all of the immigration policies and the aggressive nature of what ICE was trying to do, and also the tariffs, which were, causing many people's 401ks to plummet because the stock market didn't like the idea of, causing a trade war between China and the United States or some of our allies like Canada and Mexico. It's still a very uncertain time. And I think whatever you can do to find, whether it's a safe space or a safe calming activity or something in which you can release some of the tension and find a way to get the burden of this fear off of you, that is another health promoting thing that I want to urge you to do. Some people will try meditation, mindfulness techniques. I know that the Senior Center has these programs for seniors. Yoga also is offered at the Senior Center, and that may be a way that you can release some of the tension. Sometimes it's just deciding, okay, I'm not going to watch the news today, or I'm going to watch a ball game today. If that's your happy place, do it. If your happy place is going to a particular shopping center and having a nice afternoon with a iced coffee and doing a little shopping, that's your happy place. Great. But I think that people are kind of building up this tension internally, and it ends up with bad ways of letting it out, whether it's road rage or uncivil behavior at the grocery store, or talking to your neighbors in a harsh way, not being as tolerant of events around you. These are all things that I think we can avoid if we have outlets. For me, it's watching a baseball game and also playing with my granddaughters. I'm blessed that two of them are living with me now. It's an absolute joy every morning to wake up and see those little girls in my house. Fantastic. But there are ways that you can find, I'm sure, to release some of the tension and counteract some of the environment that is forcing us to be fearful. And that's kind of where I'm going to end it today. I know this is kind of the last big month of summer, and many of the schools will start up again even before the end of August. And it's always a little bit sad that last couple of weeks of summer. The kids are really trying to stretch it out as much as they can, and it's tough going back to school. But this is a life cycle that is actually very joyful. They're our future. City Manager Augustus used to say, they're 20% of our population and 100% of our future. So, I would encourage you to do some fun things with your kids or grandkids before school starts again. We have some wonderful things going on in Worcester. The Worcester Ecotarium is celebrating a 200th anniversary summer, which means that they're going to have all them kind of special events there all through the month of August. The Woo Sox are in, frequent presence in town, and that's a blast to go to those games. And then there are kids events at a lot of the libraries around, not just in Worcester itself, but in the towns. Do something nice with the kids, and then you won't feel so bad about sending them back to to school. And you shouldn't feel bad about that, because school is a wonderful thing. School taught me English. My parents were both German speaking, and without elementary school and subsequent education in that system in New York City, I learned how to become a full-blooded American boy, and then later a doc. So thank you for letting me talk to you about the month of August. Stay connected with the Worcester Senior Center, and I'll see you back here in September.